All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Stepping Out group. My name is Marissa. I'm a recovered alcoholic, and my primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Marissa.
All right, so this is the Stepping Out group meeting. We normally meet at 7:30, and I believe starting next week, we are gonna go back to our normal time according to, the way we are set, 7:30 to 8:30 every Sunday at the 12-step house. So, we adjusted it to 8 under all the circumstances, but if this is going to keep continuing, we're gonna bring it back to our normally scheduled programming. All right. So if we could please open up with a moment of silence followed by the Serenity Prayer.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Amen. So if anybody should ask you what Alcoholics Anonymous is, Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are fully self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organizations, or institutions. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help others to achieve sobriety. So I'm gonna bring up Cole because he wasn't here the last 2 weeks, just to do a quick secretary's report. And he's just gonna tell us about anniversaries and if anybody is.
Also been secretary for April 19. Go girl.
Yeah.
Do you know the secretary's report?
I have it.
Okay.
I have it.
Go.
Good evening, my name's Cole, I'm an alcoholic. All right, welcome to the Stepping Out group. We meet every Sunday at 7:30, and we are open for membership. If you'd like to become a member, please see anyone with their hand raised right now, or reach out to one of us on Facebook. We'd love to get you involved, especially once we reopen here. We do have literature for the taking. Normally, that when everything's set back up, we're going to have everything available for people. During this meeting, please silence your cell phones. That's greatly appreciated. Don't have any papers to be signed. We do have a cleanup committee. Everybody in here, please clean up after yourselves. We have T-shirts for sale once we get back to business here. They're $15 each. Excellent T-shirts. Definitely want to welcome anybody who's watching, who's with us for the first time. Very glad you're here. Let's see. And then we do celebrate anniversaries at the end of each month. So if you could, Drew, too, tell me, anybody, if you are online or if you're with us, please raise your hand if you're going to be celebrating for the month of April. Billy.
I have, my name is Billy. I'm an alcoholic. I had 1 year. I'm on Friday the 10th.
All right, Billy. Congratulations. And then Marissa.
3 years.
Marissa has 3 years.
Caitlin has a year.
Too.
All right, congratulations. Anybody else in here? You got anybody like writing in there, Drew? No? Okay. All right, so Billy with 1 year, Marissa with 3 years, and Caitlin with 1 year. All right, we'll get back to this. And then we do hold our business meeting the third Sunday of every month, so we're gonna probably do that the first week that we're reopened. We'll have everybody get together, assign different roles. Again, if anybody's looking for a home group, love to have you. Anybody have announcements in here for the good of Alcoholics Anonymous? Probably not. Okay. That's it, really. All All right, let's thank Marissa for chairing the meeting.
Thanks, Marissa. Thank you, Cole. So I'm sorry, I do have one announcement. I guess Stevie just sent out a brief little message, and we are gonna have to stick to 8 to 9 while we are in the quarantine and doing it here from the JC's compound. So the meeting will be from 8 p.m. until 9 p.m. every Sunday. So I apologize for that. I guess I spoke a little bit too soon. All right, so if I can have Kenny come up and read more about alcoholism.
All right, Kenny.
I'll do this.
Yeah, sorry, my bad.
Kenneth alcoholic.
Hey.
Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. We are like men who have lost their legs, they never grow new ones. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. We have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there has been brief recovery, followed always by a still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but
But it hasn't done so yet.
And Alicia, if you would come up and please read how it works.
Yeah, Alicia.
Hi, my name's Alicia, and I'm an alcoholic.
Alicia.
How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to the simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcoholism, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. There is one who has all power, that one is God, may you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we are alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could ever leave our alcoholism. And C, that
God could and would if He were sought.
Seek him out. Thank you, Alicia.
Great job.
Okay, for anybody that's new watching, or just to give you an idea of what we do at the Stepping Out group now, is it's a solution-based meeting where people could come if they want the solution on how to stay sober. And we've been doing step series for the last year and a half, and we've had some amazing people. Stevie just finished last week with step 12. We had Rob S. We've had Brian H. We've had lots of people that came and did amazing. And we also had Paul D. And he was amazing.
Amen.
But tonight, we're starting off fresh with step 1. The woman that's going to be speaking tonight, she is my sponsor. I think that she has more knowledge than anybody that I have come into contact with of the Big Book. And I am so grateful that God placed her in my path of recovery and in my life, because I have learned so much from her. And I am just so excited to welcome and announce Karina D is coming up to start on step 1 tonight.
Hi family, my name is Karina DeLeo. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'm going to try.
A little bit closer.
Closer?
Yeah, the closer you are to the mic, the better.
Technical. Thank you, Paul. I'd like to start off by saying that God is good all the time, even when I don't think so. And what a beautiful day to be able to have the opportunity to speak about a life-giving program. This program saved my life, and it gave me a life worth living. Happy Easter to everybody. I'm sure the heavens are just having a big old party. I feel very joyful in my spirit, and I wanted to thank Marissa for inviting me here to do the series, and anybody that is involved for the setup, and to be able to have an open line of communication with our fellows. Very important, not only for my sobriety, but for everybody's sobriety. And so I might have some knowledge of the Big Book, but I hope today, my prayer is that I share my heart with you. More than that, I'm going to share my experience, strength, and knowledge to the best of my ability. Speaking is not one of my favorite things to do, but when God calls, we respond with a yes. And that's what I've been taught, and that has been a blessing in my life. And so I'm so grateful that back in 1999 that I found shelter here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no hope. I was hopeless, zero hope. I was a shell of a woman. I was dead behind my eyes. if I was not ingesting the alcohol, I was thinking about where, when, and how. And yet, I had a desperate desire to stop. Our textbook, by the way, our textbook, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, we have a nickname for it, the Big Book. And I like to explain that because 6 years in Alcoholics, or around Alcoholics Anonymous, circling the drain, I loitered thinking that I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? But I was in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had never seen or opened the Big Book. So it's very important for me to explain that the Big Book is Alcoholics Anonymous. So if you're not in the Big Book, you're not in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so in 1999, my appearance looked a lot different than it does right now. And through the grace of God, He has restored me piece by piece. I came in here with yellow skin, my hair falling out. I had lost my menstrual cycle, and I was about 80 pounds. I had an inverted stomach and wasn't able to eat solid food. And so, you know, if there is someone that doesn't believe that there is a God, I'm evidence. This is proof. Because I had no power to change me. Excuse me. I'm going to read a little something from As Bill Sees It, 42, page 42. And it says, self-confidence and willpower. That's the title of the message or the passage. When first challenged to admit defeat, most of us revolted. We had approached AA expecting to be taught self-confidence. Then we had been told that so far as alcohol was concerned, self-confidence was no good whatever. In fact, it was a total liability. There was no such thing as personal conquest of alcoholic compulsion by the unaided will. It is when we try to make our will conform with God's that we begin to use it rightly. To all of us, this was a most wonderful revelation. Our whole trouble had been the misuse of willpower. We had tried to bombard our problems with it instead of attempting to bring it into agreement with God's intention for us. To make this increasingly possible is the purpose of AA's 12 steps. So it's about conforming our will. Well, I was not about conforming to anything. No. Very defiant. If you tell me to sit, I'm going to stand. If you tell me to walk, I'm going to run. Right? And I now know today that is one of the earmarkings of an alcoholic. And so the beginning parts of being delivered into Alcoholics Anonymous was nothing but an act of providence, because I had no power to get here on my own. I started drinking alcoholically around 20, but I had drank recreational, quote unquote. I was a potential alcoholic from 16 until that point. And at that time I had some blackouts, but I didn't know what that was. And, you know, I was getting into little scrapes here and there and playing hooky, smoking cigarettes, and just doing everything that I wasn't supposed to do. But the alcohol, when I drank it, I definitely did not drink like a lady. I was a guzzler, and I remained that way throughout my drinking. I drank for effect only. In our textbook, which is another piece that I would love to read for us. And it is in the doctor's opinion, men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. So that's what I'm looking for, ease and comfort. From whence I could remember, restless, irritable, and discontent. That's my nature. Didn't fit in my own family. As a child, I looked like a little boy. had potty mouth. I stole a lot, I cursed a lot. My mom wasn't in the home. She did shift work, had 3 children at the age of 22, so my sister raised us, me and my brother. And no, there was just no authority, and I would not accept any authority. And so, you know, I always felt like there was something wrong with Karina, but I never knew what that was. Couldn't put my finger on it. I now know that I was a freeze-dried alcoholic. Because all of those behaviors, all it needed to do was pour a little bit of the alcohol on it. So alcohol did not create my moral fiber being in the toilet. It didn't create me being a thief. All it did was expose it.
That's good.
I lived in my head, and that's a very painful place to be. Nobody understands me. I'm very lonely. I'm walking around with a very, very negative narrative in my head. My mother doesn't love me. My father left me. No one's coming for you, kid. You're on your own. You know, take what, you know, you get them before they'll get you. And, you know, we were not allowed, you know, I learned early on how to live the double life. My mother was a raging rageaholic. She suffered from untreated bipolar, and it was a very scary place for a child to grow up. There were no words spoken in our home. It was a dictatorship. It was a very draconian type of atmosphere. I was denied my emotions and my feelings, and I stuffed every one of them. And that the way it came out in the street was just being a bully and beating people up and stealing and doing all of that behavior. And so my alcoholism was being treated by other things unbeknownst to me. And so when I put alcohol in my person, it's just like I just felt normal. It was like, wow, like this is what's been missing, right? And so, as I said, you know, I was a youngster, 12, the first one was 8, and then I think again I drank at 12, and then from 12 to 16 I partied with my friends chipping in and stuff like that. Could only get our hands on, you know, a little bit here and there. But after I had my son at 17, my drinking really took off, and it progressed. As we know, the doctor's opinion talks about it being a progressive illness. Always, if it's left untreated, it will always get worse, never better. You know, and I didn't know any of that language. I didn't know what alcoholism was. I knew I drank too much and that I did some crazy stuff, but I did not know what alcoholism was. And so the finishing part of that paragraph is, you know, I want that sense of ease and comfort. And it says, you know, I get that, you know, as soon as I take a couple of drinks, and it says drinks which I see others taking with impunity. That means no punishment. So the non-alcoholic that can drink and not, you know, suffer the consequences that I do, meaning blackouts, getting into trouble, you know, and all the other stuff that comes with it. It says after they succumb to the desire, that's the obsession. After I succumb to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops. Am I okay?
Okay, you're close to the mic.
I'm too close to the
No,
mic.
you're not close.
I'm not close enough. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Okay, thank you.
So, phenomenon of craving develops. I'm going to pass through a well-known stage, known stages as a spree, emerging remorseful with the firm resolution to not drink. This is repeated over and over again, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope for his or her recovery, and that was true in my case. And so, you know, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous in 1999, I was able to collect, through the grace of God, close to 3 months. Now, before Alcoholics Anonymous, I was married, I had an early marriage. I got married at 22, but I was married for 14 years, and in that marriage, my alcoholism was disturbing my husband. It wasn't disturbing me. And he asked me to cool out, or, you know, something was going to happen. And to prove him that I could control it, I stopped for 4 months. And I can tell you that it was probably the worst 4 months of my life, because I was restless, irritable, and discontented. But I was, see, I can do it. And then there was another period where I became a jewelry designer, and during that year and a half of school, I did not pick up. But I was busy doing other things. There was a brass ring. So back then, I could have periods of sobriety. But once I turned into the real deal, that was impossible. And so I collected these 3 months in early sobriety, and, you know, I thought that there was going to be a marching band or something, but nobody seemed to care, right? And so I started to get resentful. You know, the hope was starting to fade out, because, you know, I had a little bit of hope once I realized there were people just like me in a place that I could go, right? And so now it's like I'm at this christening, and there's a party thereafter in a restaurant/bar, and I see people taking drinks with impunity. And I start to get resentful, and I think, you know what? Maybe I'm not really an alcoholic. You know, I didn't drink in 3 months, and I picked up again. And thank you, God. I mean, this is His story. It's not my story. It's a story filled with grace. I was able to get back to Alcoholics Anonymous the next day. Not everybody is so lucky to have that, and I was blessed. And then the next time that I would experience self again and self-will again would probably be a couple of months therein. I'd collect another 3 or 4 months, and I remember I was still a server. Through the grace of God, I still had a job. And my friend Steve had asked me if I would come to his apartment and have dinner, because his husband was a chef. And we were very close on the job. And so I went to his house, his apartment, and there was, oh my goodness, he cooked such a beautiful meal and everything. And, you know, they had asked me if I would go and get some ice for our, you know, our drink. And I was having ginger ale or whatever, and I opened the freezer, and there stood a bottle of Absolute, and it screamed, "Karina, you can have one, nobody's gonna know. Just one?" Because I was feeling a little bit anxious with nothing in my system. I hadn't really been able to socialize without having something. And I drank that night, and I drank a lot. And I remember it was a place called Whitestone, and where I lived was on Long Island, and it was probably about a 35-minute drive. I remember getting on what would be considered the 495 here. I got on, merged onto the highway. I looked over my shoulder. I made an L to the left lane, because that's where I live. And that's all I remember. Pedal to the metal, and I landed in my house. I pulled up in front of my house 35 minutes later. Complete blackout. Powerless. And I, through the grace of God, got back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I collected another couple of months. And on December 25th, I decided to take my mother to Christmas dinner with my son, who was 19 at the time. And I was feeling pretty good about myself. You know, hadn't cracked open the big book. In fact, I don't think I even really heard much about that. It was more, you know, just really treating the body and doing the fellowship and going to the same meetings, a lot of repetition. And so what happened was I still had an alcoholic mind. And when we got to the dinner, when we got to the restaurant, didn't take long before my mother's voice kind of pierced my heart, if you will. She had just, you know, she created the buttons, and she knew what to do with them. And it wouldn't take too long, and I told the waiter, I'm paying the bill, hit it, and I'll let you know when to stop. And I pulled him on the side. It took the first drink, and I felt what they talk about, the vicious cycle. I felt the transformation in my body as the liquor rose to my head, you know, and I thought I would manage better this time, right? Because I suffer from delusion. All of the cars tipping over, me getting locked up, being put in jail, all of the, you know, incomprehensible demoralization that I had gone through, whether it was a month ago or a year ago, it didn't come to the forefront of my mind. You know, and the textbook talks about this mental blank spot that we have. You know, even if I did have sound reasoning, even if I did premeditate having a drink, the insane thought would always win out. And that was my experience in a flash. I had no thought I wasn't going to drink. There was nothing in my mind about drinking, yet there I was. And thank God I had the presence of mind to ask my son if he would, you know, drive me home. So I finished out the dinner. I really did only have 2 this time. That used to be my standard line, but the truth was is I only had 2, but that was enough for me to experience that spiritual poverty that I had felt so many times before. I knew that I could not live without the alcohol, and I knew that I could not take one more drop. That was the jumping off place, you know, and that was that emotional turning point for me. And so when we pulled up in my dwelling place, the person that I lived with, who was a non-alcoholic, as soon as I walked in the house, because I'm a transformer, my face changes, my whole voice changes, my attitude changes. By the way, an attitude, the definition for attitude is a settled way of thinking, right? And so when I got in there, he's like, "Have you been drinking?" And for the very first time, I said yes. And the tears just started to stream down my face. You know, there was so much fear. And it was like a nanosecond of relief and, oh my God, now I have to do something about it. And Steve loved me enough, meaning that he didn't throw me away, and he didn't judge me, and he didn't ostracize me. And he asked me to come in the bedroom where we sat and we had a talk, a heart to heart. And he explained to me they had a friend that was a real alcoholic, and that he went to this place, and he said it was an A&A place, and he now drinks coffee instead of liquor. And I thought in my head, this guy's insane if he thinks I'm going to switch that for that. But I listened, and you know, that was the chink in the armor. That was the little opening in my heart and in my mind that would say, I have to go back to AA and do it AA's way. You know, and what I heard, and that was 16 months collectively that I had not drank around the clock. I had a nasty little habit that I picked up while not drinking that was treating my alcoholism. I was stealing daily thousands of dollars of food and clothing. That's what I planned on every day. That was what was treating my alcoholism, and I did not need the money. The person that I lived with was very well off, loved me to pieces. I had my own motorcycle, my own Corvette. I had money in the bank. I still had a job. I had a nice amount of clothing, jewelry. I wanted for nothing materially, so there was no need for me to steal except for the spiritual poverty that I was experiencing, right? And couldn't live with that. And you know, you cannot be in a spiritual program. You cannot want to be spiritual and live foul. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. And that is truth. And so, what I did here in the 16 months, and my sober date is December 26, 2001. And a lot of things had to change in order for that to stay the same. I was going to need to come all the way in and sit all the way down. Never did that in my life before. Never told anybody all about Karina. I mean, the total everything. And I personally needed outside help. I was also seeing a psychiatrist, which helped me a lot with stealing stuff and to be able to be honest. I had a lot of trust issues. Why? Because I was untrustworthy. But more than that, my formative years was very, very tumultuous. And as we go through the steps, you'll hear some of that stuff. And alcohol quieted all of that. So December 26th, I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous, and thank you, God. You all opened your heart and arms to me and showed me how to live. Now, I can't tell you that I came in, you know, hi-ho, hi-ho. No. I'm a personal space girl, right? I had the leather jacket on, you know, the attitude of, you know, very much guarded. Mostly I looked at the floor a lot, went in the back, came late, left early, was not going to be holding hands and saying prayers. But what I heard in the 16 months was, if you do a 90 and 90, your chances of getting sober and staying sober are pretty good. If you do those steps, you're going to be okay. And that was really all I wanted to be, was okay. I translate that into peace. I really just wanted peace. And I wanted to be relevant. Because all my life I felt invisible. I felt like no one cared, no one could see me, no one loved me. I felt very unlovable. And you know, the friction within my spirit was, I want love so badly, but I don't trust you, so I can't let you in. So that makes for a very, very lonely place. And I had a big black hole in my chest. Alcohol filled that. And you know, the book talks about lack of power. That's our dilemma, right? It's not really about the alcohol. No power, no God, right? So lack of power is my dilemma. And where and how am I to find this power? Well, that's exactly what the book is about, right? Its main object is to show you how to find that power, right? So why wouldn't I pick the book up? Because I need power. I don't have power. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to keep picking up. Step 1 tells me that I'm going to drink. And my experience shows that. In the doctor's opinion, it blew me away. In the middle of the 90 and 90, I met a woman who was armed with the facts about herself, and she took me through the textbook of Alcoholics Anonymous. And she gave me her most precious commodity, which was her time. And when I looked and read the doctor's opinion, and it talked about an allergy, his theory was that we have this allergy, it blew me away. I had many first-step experiences. I ran into myself many times out there. But I didn't have a second step in place in order for me to continue down the path. So yes, I have a body that has an allergy, right? But that's not the real problem. Like, the first drink is not going to get me drunk, right? It's the thought that precedes it. In other words, that lie that I keep believing, like, I'm going to manage better next time, or at the restaurant, I'm only going to have a couple because I can't deal with my mother right now, right? But that's never what happens. So my mind is lying to me. Essentially, what I read to you was, you know, it says, to them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. It says, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. That's a delusion. Delusion means that I cannot see the truth. It's not that I'm denying it. I'm not capable of seeing the truth. And, you know, my experience backed that up because in the end, you know, before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, before reading the doctor's opinion, for close to 2 years, every single day, at night, I'd be poured into bed, and I would swear to the people that loved me that I would not drink anymore. And I really, really did not want to anymore. I was so sick. I was physically sick and tired. And I hated myself. It was, you know, what I had done to myself, how what I became, right? And I wanted help, and I didn't know how to get there. And so I would say that I'm not going to do that yet. As soon as I opened my eyes, my disease was waiting at the foot of the bed for me. And it would whisper in my ear, "Psst, I'm in here. You can have one." I would fall to the floor, crawl in that closet, pull down the alcohol down my throat, and alcohol would unleash its power. That was repeated over and over and over, and that's insanity, right? And so, where and how am I to find this power? Well, next week I'm going to tell you all about it. It's in the second step.
Yay, Karina!
Does anyone want to share? We do have some few minutes on step 1. Experience. Hi. Aye.
Yeah, go through it.
Want to come here?
Ready?
I'll be brief. My name is Freddie. I'm an alcoholic drug addict.
Hey, Freddie.
I just want to share real brief. Paul, I've seen you speak at the 12-step on Sunday, and now I've seen your wife speak. You guys are a tremendous blessing to this program.
Amen.
I mean, there's some things that you said at the 12-step that just makes a ton of sense. Like, you know, I don't have a drug problem. I have a problem without the drugs. And that's sunk into me, and I'm coming up on a year now. And I just want to thank you guys both. It's a true blessing from the Lord to have you guys in this program. Thank you.
Ready?
I really got this.
Yeah, you can hold it. Hold it.
I'm Cole, I'm an alcoholic.
Oh.
Karina, thank you. That was beautiful. The part, I think that's my favorite line in the book. Really dealing with the problem at least is the, restless irritability and discontentment. And then again, I never really heard anybody break down the differentiating the true from the false the way you did as a delusion. That was really cool as well. I know for me, like that is something that happens in recovery as well. When I kind of fade away from the program, when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, I start to feel that restlessness, that irritability and discontentment. That for me, like that manifests in, I'm just not comfortable in my own skin. I can't sit here. I can't sit still. I'm just not okay. And then the irritability is, the lady in front of me in Publix is taking forever counting her change, and that's just pissing me off, and he's pissing me off, and this guy's full of shit, and I'm just like losing my mind. And then the discontentment, I know that manifests for me in like, is this all there is? Okay, I'm sober. I got some things going. Is this it? I don't have. What else is there? And so like I related to that a lot when you really share that, because for me, like going through the book, that was where, right off the bat, that was a huge turning point for me, because I started to really identify with what it was saying, and I really identified with those feelings. And then you did a great job kind of leading into step 2, where, okay, I am powerless. Now I need to find this power. And, it says multiple times in the book, this is the solution. The main purpose of this book is to find a power greater than ourselves, which will solve our problem. And so once I really identified with that specific paragraph, that in its entirety, that's when I was really able to find the willingness to move on. And that's when I actually started to understand Alcoholics Anonymous. I understood the mental obsession precedes the first drink, and that cycle. And then at the end where it says, I don't want to touch your book.
Okay.
Where it says, I'll shut up pretty quickly here. Where it says after they've succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, the phenomenon of craving develops, and then I'm going on a run, passing through the well-known stages of a spree. And then when you were saying waking up in the morning or in the evenings, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again in the evenings, and then very next morning, boom, right back to it. That's my experience. And this is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope for his recovery. And that was it. Right with those last lines, I said, that's me. I'm this person in this book. I'm starting over. I'm restless, irritable, and discontent. Using outside things to feel better. Like, that was cool when you mentioned, different solutions for your alcoholism, like the stealing. I identify with that a lot. And I'm doing those things. They don't work. Eventually, I'm putting it in my body. The spree develops. I'm going on a run. Then I'm emerging remorseful, and it's just repeated over and over. And I really appreciate you sharing, and I'm excited for next week. Thank you.
Thanks.
I just want to thank you. Like, that was amazing. To me, the first step, I think the first time around why I relapsed was because I knew my life was unmanageable, but I didn't want to admit that I was powerless. And a lot of people that know me, I'm a little bit of a control freak, so admitting that I was powerless, to me was a sign of being weak, and it was something I struggled with. And now today, knowing that I am completely powerless over drugs and alcohol, and as I'm coming up next week on 3 years, I also realize that after I've overcome and I've been delivered from alcohol, from being just in that state of constantly obsessing about drugs and alcohol, and it doesn't even come into my mind no more, I now have to realize that even though I've overcome that aspect, there are things in my life that I'm powerless over. People, places, things, that if I try to control, my life becomes unmanageable. And it's something that we've been talking about and working on, and it's a, you know, I'm not perfect by any means. I fail every day, but I'm willing to keep growing along spiritual lines, and I'm willing to keep reaching out to the next alcoholic that went before me, that I see that has what I want, and that was you and Paul, and I'm just so grateful, because just step one, and I'm just like, wow. So I am looking so forward to next week with step two. And as I was thinking and reflecting on step one today, this thing came into my mind, and I shared it on Facebook. It was this quote. It said, "You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step." And that was, I felt that, because that first step is the hardest, but once you do it, even if you can't see the whole staircase, just put one foot in front of the other and you keep trying. And like they say, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Thank you so much. Let's give Karina another hand. All right, Billy, you want to do the chips? You know how we do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of
Every month?
every month, and then just clap.
Hi everybody, I'm Billy, I'm an alcoholic.
Really?
Here in South Florida, the chip system, there's a chip system to denote lengths of sobriety. The first one is a silver for 24 hours to 29 days. Anybody? Alright. Next one is 30 days. Anybody? Alright, 60 days. Alright. 90 days. No. Yeah, 90 days. Keep coming back. 4 months. This is definitely a little weird. 5 months.
It is weird.
6 months.
Keep coming
Keep
back.
coming back. 7 months.
Keep coming back.
8 months. 9 months. 10 months. 11 months. What? No? Alright. Suggestions. Read the big book. Go through it with your sponsor. Don't pick up. And help others.
Amen.
All right, and I'd just like to thank everybody for watching on Facebook Live and on Zoom, and for everybody that was here tonight. Kenny for reading, Cole for the secretary's report, Alicia for how it works. Let's give Karina another hand. And I just wanted to say one more thing that that I've said the last 2 weeks. And guys, if you're sitting at home, again this week, there was a lot of overdoses, a lot of death that I saw, and a lot of people that are relapsing right now. And I know a lot of people are sitting at home and you're feeling alone and you're feeling like you don't have anywhere to go, there's no meetings, there's no this or that, no restaurants to eat at, and I get it. And this is when it comes to picking up the phone, or if you're in sober living, going next door to your neighbors, maybe knocking on their door, asking somebody else if they're okay. Because sometimes when I'm not okay, if I ask somebody else how they're doing, it gets me out of myself, and then I forget about why I wasn't okay.
Amen.
But keep in mind, the first 100 men and women, when they started this, when this all got started and off the ground, they didn't have meetings then. They didn't. They did it through telephone calls, through mail, through just meeting in the hospital. Bill and Bob and everybody go in there just saying, hey, do you have any alcoholics here that we can talk to? Do that. Reach out to somebody. If you see somebody that's having a bad day or going through it, ask them, is there anything I can do for you? You know, maybe they just need somebody to ask them if they're okay. So let's just all try to support each other through this time. Guys, reach out, pick up the phone. Everybody in our home group, if you're watching, you know, Cole, I know everybody has Cole's number. And if you don't, you can find him on Facebook, but we're all here for you. And I've asked John to read the promises.
All right, John. Suave.
If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are half. Closer.
Hold it.
If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in unselfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises?
We think not.
They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but they will always materialize if we work for them.
Drop the mic.
All right, and at this time, we're gonna, I guess, just all stand up. Paul, can you take us out?
I would like to thank the group for having a meeting that we can all try and get together and beat this thing. Thank you, Rita, for sharing, and everyone for their participation. Take a moment of silence and close with the Lord's Prayer for those who care to join. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory